po. Also po, in the crime of rape with homicide, People versus Laog, ang sabi ng korte, hindi importante na that the person killed is someone other than the woman victim of rape. So, hindi daw po kailangan na yung taong napatay is other than the woman victim of rape. Doon sa special, di ba ang rape with homicide kasi it's a special complex crime. Okay? The term homicide is to be understood in its generic sense. And of course, it includes murder, slight physical injuries committed by reason on or on occasion of rape. So, even if or any or all of the circumstances such as yung treachery, yung abuse of superior strength, kung may evident premeditation, kung meron mang itong mga to, 'di ba? Itong mga to is aggravating circumstances to mga to, 'di ba? If these are alleged in the information, okay? If there is a rape, that will still kahit na kung may rape na nangyari, that will immediately be homicide, hindi siya murder. Because it's a special complex crime. Next is, we go with Title 7, Crimes committed by public officers. First one is madalas nangyayari, bribery. Okay? How is direct bribery committed under Article 210? Okay? Bribery in general is the receiving by a public officer, either personal or through mediation of another of any offer, promise, gift, or present to influence his behavior in office. Di ba, madalas mangyari to, di ba? Yung mga pamerienda, pa-token, pa-gasolina, okay? The crime of direct bribery has the following elements. There are 4. Number 1, the offender is a public officer. Number 2, he accepts an offer or promise or receives a gift or present by himself or through another. So, in bribery, it's not necessarily that it's the public officer who personally received the gift or the promise. It can be through another person. Okay? And the offer, promise, okay, was accepted or received by the public officer or through another. And lastly, the act which the offender agrees to perform or which he executes be connected with the performance of his official duties. This is the most important, okay, in direct bribery. The offender agrees. This is the corpus delicti of the direct bribery. When the offender, this is the public officer, agrees to perform or execute the request or the promise, and this is in connection with his official duties. Kailangan bang pera, property, or services? Okay? Ang sabi ng korte, it must be of some value. Love, pa naman yan? It can be anything of value. What is the difference between bribery from the reliction of duty? Okay? The offense described in Article 208 compared to that of bribery defined and penalized under the third paragraph of Article 210, okay, which consists in accepting gift or money with a view of refraining from doing something which pertains to the official duty of the offender. Okay? In the latter offense, the Article 210, the bribery, okay? However, it is essential that the public officer refrain from doing his official duty in consideration of gift, receive, or promise. This element is not necessary in the crime of prevarication or the reliction of duty. How about the qualified bribery? Just like qualified theft, Okay, this is heavier. Mas mabigat ang penalty than that of the simple bribery or the simple theft. Okay, this is Article 211A-A. There are many instances. Just read po. Mas mabigat lang yung penalties niya. Next one is the corruption of public officials. Magka-partner tong bribery and corruption of public officials. The public officer will be liable for bribery, at yung nagbabribe naman, he will be liable for corruption of public officials. In this case, Article 212, okay, the refusal of the officer to accept the bribe or he is pretending to accept the same but in fact does not do so and instead report the matter to his superior prevents the consummation of the crime bribery, and the offerer of the bribe will only be liable for attempted bribery. So for example, si Pedro, isang administrative officer ng Land Transportation Office. Kunwari lang naman na sinabi ni Juan, "Uy, Pedro," sabi niya kay Pedro, "Uy, Pedro, ikaw na bahala sa lisensya ko, hindi na ako mag-exam, bigyan na lang kita ng 5,000 pesos, sabi niya. Si Pedro ngayon ang in charge sa licensing. Okay? Sabi ni Pedro, ayoko, sabi niya. If there is a refusal, or kahit tinanggap niya, tapos habang pagtanggap niya ng pera, ni-report niya immediately dun sa superior ni Pedro, this will prevent the commission of the crime of direct bribery. Anong mangyayari dun sa offense? It will only be an attempted bribery. It's not a direct bribery, only an attempted one. Attempted bribery is penalized by Article 212 of the Revised Penal Code. And of course, one will be charged with Article 212, which is the corruption of public officials. Fraud against malversation of public funds. Okay. Next one is the malversation of public funds under Article 217. Sorry kung sasabay ko na yung criminal jurisprudence at saka Crim law 2 para mas maintindihan nyo yung application ng Crim 2 is mas magandang cases kasi siya. Hinahaluan ko na rin ng konting discussion tsaka jurisprudence kasi para mas maintindihan natin. Okay, first, next one is the malversation of public funds, Article 217. Okay, the provision on Article 217 punishes the misappropriation of public funds or property by the official who is accountable thereof. Always remember that in Article 217, the offender must be the accountable person. If he is just a regular employee, okay? Tapos, indirect lang yung accountability niya, he will not be liable for Article 217 because under Article 217, it expressly provides that the offender must be the accountable officer. And of course, there are 3 acts. Okay? It can be through appropriation, appropriates, takes, or misappropriates the public funds, permits through abandonment or negligence another take of public funds, and of course, he is guilty of misappropriation. Rueda versus Honorable Sandigan Bayan. Sabi ng korte, remember, the failure of the public officer to have duly forthcoming any public funds or property with which he is chargeable or accountable upon demand by any unduly authorized officer shall be prima facie evidence that he has put such missing funds or property to personal use. So, kung sinabi ng boss ni Pedro, kailangan mo nang iresibo at i-remit yung mga nakulit mong pera. At itong pera na to, hindi na i-remit agad o na late lang ng pag-remit si Pedro. Pwede nang, according sa case ng Rueda versus Honorable Sandigan Bayan, Article 217 will apply. it shall be a prima facie evidence that he has put such missing funds or property to personal use. Okay? Of course, since it's only a prima facie, it's only a presumption, it is always rebuttable. Okay? As long as the accused public officer, accountable officer, presents an adequate evidence that he can nullify the said charge against him, then he will always be the presumption that he used the funds for your personal use will be rebutted. Next one is kailangan ba na may demand from the boss? Kailangan bang sabihin niya, "Oy Pedro," kailangan bang sabihin ng boss ni Pedro na, o kaya i-order mismo ng boss na i-remit mo na? Sabi ng korte sa case ng Valenzuela versus People, prior demand is not necessary for the prosecution of malversation of public funds. What is only important here is that, okay, sabi ng case, demand merely raises a prima facie presumption, okay, that the missing funds have been put to personal use. The demand itself is not an element and it's not indispensable to constitute malversation. Next one is we have your crimes against public interest. Okay? This is the title 3 to ng book 2. We have first your article 169 or the forgery. Okay? Under forgery, the article 169, the provisions of forgery punish acts of tampering. Okay, madalas gawin to ng mga ibang estudyante. Okay, they tamper or falsify or commit any acts of falsification in commercial documents. Okay, the elements of forgery are the following. Number 1, the offender commits act of forgery on treasury or banknote or instrument payable to bearer or order. The act of forgery consists in giving these documents the appearance of a true or genuine document, or by erasing, substituting, counterfeiting, or altering by any means the figures, letters, words, or signs contained therein. That is the meaning or the ways to commit forgery in commercial documents. We also have the so-called forgery committed by a public officer. Okay? However, it's for public or official documents. This can be found in Article 171. Okay? That is the falsification of public officers or employee or notary, ecclesiastical minister. That's Article 171. Here, the document can either be a deed, a public document, official document, okay? While if it's a private document, okay, a private document is a deed or instrument executed by a private person, okay? This is not covered by the Article 171 except if that's the public or official document. Is criminal intent essential to constitute the crime of falsification of private or public documents? The answer there is yes. That is the case of People versus Ann. Okay? Piliin ko na lang yung madalas lumabas. We're almost done with book 2. Ang diniscuss ko lang sa inyo is yung madalas na lumalabas. Mami, may idadagdag ako about sa jurisprudence. Next one is perjury, Article 183. Nangyayari ito pag nagiging witness. This is only committed by a witness or the affiant. Okay? The affiant is the one who executes an affidavit or a sworn or oath. Okay? It is only committed it has 4 elements actually. Number 1, there is a statement or affidavit. Okay? Number 2, it's committed, it is before a competent officer authorized to receive or administer such oath. Next one, there is a willful and deliberate assertion of falsehood by the offender, and the short statement is containing false disregard by law. Madalas nangyayari ito sa mga witness. Pansin niyo pag sa isang kaso, kinakasuhan usually to, pero not all the time, okay? Natalo yung pinagwitnessan mo, yung party na pinagwitnessan mo, natalo. Ngayon, kinasuhan ka ng perjury. The only way for you to be not liable para ma-dismiss yung kaso mo is i-prove mo na what you only stated is those personal sa'yo. So, yun, makakaligtas ka naman. And of course, perjury, there are 2 ways para gawin mong mag-perjure ka. Number 1, falsely testifying. And of course, number 2 is to making a false affidavit. Pag kinasuhan ka ng perjury at yung nilagay mo naman sa statement mo, yun naman talaga yung pagkakaalam mo, then of course, the court will know that, will be able to determine that. So, don't worry guys, we're almost done. Arbitrary detention, forcible abduction, and kidnapping. Okay? Title 9. This is crimes against personal liberty and security. What is kidnapping and serious illegal detention? As provided in Article 267. Okay? What is important in this sa crimes na to is that, of course, other than the element, there is the so-called deprivation of liberty. Okay? The deprivation of liberty is qualified to serious illegal detention if at least one of the following circumstances exist. Number 1, kung nagtagal yung detention mo ng more than 3 days, or yung accused is a simulated public authority, okay? Or the victim suffers serious physical injuries or threatened to be killed, or yung victim mo is a minor, isang babae, or a public officer, then the deprivation of liberty is qualified to a serious illegal detention. So, mas mabigat. Okay? Kung yung isa doon ang nangyari, in the case of People versus Ali, sabi ng batas, that will amount to serious illegal detention. Okay? Kung babae. So, piliin nyo yung mga kinikidnap ninyo. Pero huwag kayong magkidnap. Okay? Masama yun. Question. Okay? This is a case of People versus Bernie Concepcion. Okay? Pedro, let's just say, pangalanan ko na lang para hindi kayo malito. Pedro abducts the victim Ana and then he raped her. Thereafter, Pedro prevented Ana from leaving the place by putting up electric wire around the room where Ana was into, so that Ana will be prevented from talking to anyone and from getting out the room. Okay? In this case, the regional trial, the facts of the case, it was found out. Okay? This is the ruling of the court. The detention here was illegal and not attended by the circumstances that would render it serious illegal detention. Here, the court only found the accused appellant guilty of slight illegal detention. Bakit kaya? Okay? Kindly read the case of People versus Concepcion. Actually, in the level of Court of Appeals, in the case of Concepcion, the Court of Appeals found that the prosecution established the elements of abduction. However, the Court of Appeals ruled that the crime of rape absorbed the forcible abduction, considering that it was established that the original intent of the offender was to rape her. Okay? So, ano nung pinagkaiba ng illegal detention sa arbitrary detention? Illegal detention is committed by a private person. Okay? While arbitrary detention is committed by a public officer. Okay? Paano naman yung forcible abduction? There is illegal detention in forcible abduction. When the violent taking of a woman is motivated by lewd designs, may pagnanasa. Okay? Forcible abduction under Article 342 is the offense. When it is not motivated, kung walang lewd design, that is merely kidnapping under Article 267. How about unlawful arrest? Na, madalas to, sa mga pulis. Okay, unlawful arrest, Article 270. The provisions punishes any person who shall arrest or detain another without lawful or reasonable ground for the purpose of delivering him to the proper authorities. Ang unlawful arrest, meron tong tatlong elements. Okay? The first one is the offender arrests or detains another person. Number 2, the purpose of the offender is to deliver him to the proper authorities. And lastly, the arrest or detention is not authorized by law or there is no reasonable ground thereof. So, in unlawful arrest, always couple your reading with warrantless arrest and lawful arrest. Okay? Always remember yung mga requisites before warrantless arrest is valid. I discussed already the grave threats and the light threats kanina. Ayan. So, last discussion for today is coercion. What is this coercion? Okay? It can be a grave or light coercion. Grave coercion can be found in Article 286, while light coercion can be found in Article 287. Okay? In Article 286, this provision punishes the act of preventing another by means of violence from doing something not prohibited by law. So, yung pagpigil mo sa ibang tao to commit something that is not naman prohibited by law or compelling another by means of violence to do something against his will, that is coercion. Another example, madalas nangyari to. Pag pinipilit mong magtrabaho yung isang tao kahit ayaw naman niyang magtrabaho, that can be filed against her. Pero usually, ang kinakaso lang is yung slavery or yun, pwedeng slavery. And of course, always remember that there are the following elements of grave coercion. Number 1, a person prevented another from doing something not prohibited by law. Yung isa naman is the prevention or compulsion be affected by violence, which can be done by material force or such a display of force, okay, as would produce intimidation or control the will of the offended party. And lastly, the person that restrained the will and liberty of another had not the authority of law or that the right to do so. Or in other words, okay, the restraint shall not be made under the authority of law or in the exercise of any right. Example, I will give you a case. Case Barbasa versus Tugera. Pangalanan ko na lang para mas ma-remember nyo. Si Ben at saka si Chacha entered into a contract of lease. Okay? Under the lease contract, the lessor is given the option to cut off the electricity to the rented premises if yung nagre-renta would fail to pay the rentals. Okay? And the bills of the utilities. Si Chacha, yung nagre-renta, incurred some unpaid rentals and utilities. So, si Ben, he sent his assistants, the bodyguards, and they disconnected the electricity in the stalls of Chacha. Si Chacha ngayon, sabi niya, unfair naman yan, wala man lang demand, sabi niya. So, Chacha filed a complaint for grave coercion. Tanong ng korte, meron bang grave coercion? Sabi ng korte, wala po. There could be no grave coercion in the private respondent's act of exercising in behalf of the company a right afforded to the latter under the solemn and unequivocal terms of their contract. Here, Chacha should have paid his fees on time and should have respected the sanctity of their contract. Hence, there is no grave coercion. Pag hindi ka ba pinapapasok sa mall because wala kang face shield o face mask, is that light coercion? The answer there is no. Because the following are the elements of light coercion. Number 1, that the offender must be a creditor. Number 2, he seizes anything belonging to the debtor. And number 3, the seizure of the thing be accompanied by means of violence or display material force, producing intimidation. And lastly, the purpose of the offender is to apply the same to the payment of debt. Light coercion under Article 287 is only committed by a creditor. Yung mga nagpapautang. Kung hindi ka nagpapautang, malabong mangyari at malabong maikaso sa'yo ang Article 287. Always in Article 287, sa creditor lang to, sa mga nagpapautang. And the purpose of seizing the property is to apply the same for the payment na hindi binayaran ng iyong debtor. Okay? So, pwede kang makasuhan for light coercion under Article 287. Yan. So far, I'm done with my discussion for Book 2. If you have any questions po, you can message me tonight. And for some clarifications, kindly send na lang personal sa Facebook ko. Short break po muna tayo. We will proceed our discussion for evidence. Last is your evidence. This 4 p.m. Okay? Sorry. Siguro pwedeng 3:30 na lang. 3:30 p.m. Okay? We will resume this 3:30 p.m. Thank you for listening. I will send another Google Meet link na lang po. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day po.
Sige ma'am. Thank you.